I may get in trouble for this one. Red Flags of Emotional Repression, Part 23, The Need for God. Let me start by saying I was raised in religion, so a lot of this is my experience of deprogramming from religious conditioning and coming out of emotional repression at the same time. So if you weren't brought up in the church, then this may not make as much sense or resonate as much with you. Also, lucky you. I'll just try to say it as directly and bluntly as I can. Your need for God is actually your unmet need for mom and dad, which is to say your unmet need for safety and love. And there's nothing wrong with needing safety and love or mom and dad or God, except that those needs are created, sustained, and driven by buried, repressed emotions in the body. Let me say this another way. The way children attempt to get their needs met, which is to say, to get protected, loved, and taken care of when they're not being met, is by repressing and rejecting certain parts of themselves, especially emotions. Mommy doesn't like my anger, so I have to push down my anger and be a good girl. Daddy doesn't like my hurt and vulnerability, so I have to hide my hurt and vulnerability and be a strong or tough boy. Also, mommy and daddy will love me, take care of me, and keep me safe in the way that I need it. Unmet needs. All of this boils down to the deeply held unconscious belief that I have to repress parts of myself and suffer to survive, right? Some clinicians call this survival mode. And here's the tragic paradox of that situation. As long as we're repressed in survival mode, we're going to need love and safety from something outside of ourselves, like mom and dad, God, a spouse, doesn't really matter. And our systems are going to keep suffering in order to get that. And so when people come to religion or spirituality for that matter, and they start to get some acceptance or love or safety in numbers, then to their nervous systems, it's like getting a fix. It's like, oh, it's such a relief, right? But how long does it last? There's a reason why you feel good on Sunday and shitty on Monday, right? It's because when we're in emotional repression, our need for God is an addiction. Just like the addict's need for their drug, right? It's the same cycle of using, withdrawing, using again, withdrawing. Or the recovering addict's need for their meetings, right? Using, withdrawing, using, withdrawing. Or the codependent's need for their relationship, using, withdrawing, using, withdrawing. See? Pretty much everything is a drug in emotional repression, our problems and our solutions. Now, here's where KI comes in and breaks the cycle of using and withdrawing, which is also called the pleasure-pain cycle. Using emotional repression inquiry, when we begin to process both the buried emotions in the body and the repression of them, we're actually meeting our own unmet needs, right? Which is to access, feel, and express what's been buried inside us for our entire lives. When we do so, the compulsive, desperate need for love and safety from the outside, whether it be, mom and dad, or God, or spouse, or, community, it starts to die down and eventually dissolves. Then we can really begin to relate and connect with others once the addictive needing falls away. And by the way, that's both the addictive needing for them to come close and the addictive needing for them to stay away. Both are functions of emotional repression. I'm paraphrasing here, but one of my favorite authors, Anthony DeMello, says, suffering is not cured by making contact with other people or other beings. It's cured by making contact with reality. So if you suspect that your reality is you have emotional repression in your body that's driving your suffering and you want to make contact with it, then visit repressiontest.com.